Frank Besson, Colonel Edmondson, Senator Guillory, Treasurer Kennedy, Amy Matthews,
Treasurer Kennedy.
Stephen LaFard, Kevin Marcel,
Here.
Herman Miller,
Here.
Andrea Hubbard,
Here.
Representative Pearson, Bobby Smith,
Here.
and Miss Marsha Pressburg.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
If I don't mind, we'll stand for the pledge. Prayer. We'll pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, God, we just come before you today. We just ask that you bless this meeting today. God, give us wisdom and the courage to do the right things and represent these men and women who put their lives on the line every day. God, we just thank you so much for the season that we're in and the Christmas season where, God, you gave your son to sacrifice your son for us so we can live eternally with you. And we give you all the glory and praise for everything we do. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Item number 3 is a general public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who wants to make a comment or anything? No. Okay. Move on to item number 4, the board election results. We had 2 elections recently. Kim, can you take us through that?
Sure. The first election that we had was the active position which Kevin Marcel holds now. And so we finished with that election and all the votes were tabulated on Monday, November the 10th. And the votes, we didn't have that, once again, we had the same problem of not having a large percentage of our population vote. Only the actives voted for this position, but the numbers came in like this. Kevin Marcel with 127 votes, Sheldon Perkins with 52, and David Stelly with 55. And in order to win this election without having a runoff, you have to have 50% plus 1, and Kevin Marcel did have that, so he will be our active representative for the next 5 years. And then once I get finished with this, you'll need to accept my report, and that way Ms. Marsha can officially begin taking her seat on the board and voting. The second election that we had was a surviving spouse position, and we had 2 individuals that ran for this position, and as you know, this is a position that was left vacant by Ms. Shirley passing away. So this position, the person who takes this position will fill the unexpired term, which will be through June, and then on July 1st of 2015, she will pick up the next 5-year term. So the votes came in: Marsha Pressburg, 350 votes, and Doris Prudhomme, 314 votes. So Ms. Marsha Pressburg will take her seat once you accept the report.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bobby. Second by Thurman. All 4. Any against? Motion carries. Welcome aboard, Ms. Marsha.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, recommendations contained in the prior meetings, and the A board minutes from October 15, 2014. So you under tab number 1.
Kevin, if I could, I'd like to make a couple of comments just to update the committee on many items that were assigned as a result of that meeting back on October the 15th. Under item number 4 there, the motion to remind you that we had that meeting in order that Charles Hall might present his actuarial report. He did that, and we went on to the PERSAC committee on November the 19th, I believe it was. And the PERSAC committee approved our actuarial report with our employer contribution rate, our drop rate, and our funded position noted by the committee, and it was a very positive meeting for all 4 of our state retirement systems, with everybody showing considerable improvement. As expected, we're the smallest of the systems, and with the increase in our troopers this year, we were able to have an academy back at the beginning of the year, as you remember. With that increase in salary and with the positive investment results, The results from an actuarial standpoint were very, very positive, probably more so for our system than any of the other larger systems, because the numbers are so great when you look at the percentages for a smaller system like we are. So the meeting went very well, and everything went fine in that regard. Item number 7, I would simply remind you that we made some recommendations and approvals were obtained at that meeting in October to raise the investment consultant fees from $100,000 to $120,000 annually. That would be effective July 1, and we also agreed that we would increase the accounting services fee for Stephen Griffin and Associates from $42,000 to $45,000 annually. Those things have been done and accomplished, and I would say that I will have a recommendation at the end of the meeting. I won't do it now, but we'll have a recommendation at the end of the meeting concerning our attorney and the representation that we have from a legal standpoint. So I'll leave it at that at this point in time, but just remind you, those changes for the investment consultant and for the accounting firm were done. And one final comment deals with, I guess, probably item number 12, where the salaries for the assistant director and the director were discussed and approved according to the board at that meeting on October the 15th, and there was some concern expressed about maybe the position that the administration and the legislature might take as regards a little bit larger than normal salary increase for those two positions. So about 3 weeks ago, Kevin, Frank, and myself went down and visited with Mr. Jim Fannin, who's the chairman of the Joint Committee on the Budget. Had a very amiable meeting with Mr. Fannin that took about 45 minutes to an hour. He was very gracious with his time and attention, and had no problems with the recommendations that we were making, that the board has made in this regard. So I'm here to tell you that it looks very encouraging from the legislative standpoint as far as these changes are, and no issues were raised. He didn't think there would be any problems at all. So with those comments, unless you have other questions, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Earl.
What was the figures that they come up with?
On those salary increases,
Yes, sir.
for the assistant director, Kim's salary was $75,000. She was given a 4% increase, normal raise, plus a $7,000 increase for exceptional performance. It raised her salary to $85,000 from $75,000. Most of these things were done, both of these were done in regards to a comparison that was done with the other retirement systems, and it puts us more in line with what the other systems are making. And I think for my salary, it was raised from $132 to $142.5. And the thought process there was not only getting in line with the other systems, but with my pending retirement, it's going to take more than what you are currently paying the executive director in order to recruit somebody. And we made that discussion with Mr. Fannin, and he understands where we're at. I have had further conversations with several individuals who've expressed an interest in this executive director's job, and the numbers I keep hearing are between 150 and 175 to get somebody that you would want to have in here. So there are a number of options that are still being looked at. What I would like to do is probably in the next few weeks, maybe I'm hoping before the end of the year, but if not shortly after the first of the year, I'd like to meet with the executive committee and more clearly determine what the timeline looks like for my retirement, so that we can be sure that we get all of our ducks in a row as we go toward that time. And that was the reason for most of this.
You can't go over.
Still got that opinion, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Okay, do we have a motion to accept the board minutes from October 15th?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Thurman. Second by Bobby. Any against? Motion carries. All right, second item there is the investment committee's meeting on November the 19th. It should be on tab number 2. And Amy, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, just in general, it was we discussed that because of the switch up of the months and with the PERSAC committee, so in January, we're going to be doing our goals for the next year with Erwin. And we had a presentation from Von Tobel, which is an emerging markets manager. And it was very good. We don't have any problems with them. We looked at our returns, Ron's gonna be going over November's returns, October's returns, which is better, no, November. We, and then in general, we're still looking and trying to keep up with the Campbell, group. That is one of our, timber groups, which is having a little problem. And, so in January, we're gonna have a big meeting. And we're also going to be talking to JP Morgan, which is our custodian, because we're having custodial issues. So that was pretty much it. And I would recommend that we accept these committee meetings.
Earl, did you want to talk anything else about the Campbell group?
Yeah, I might just make a comment or two, because we continue to have bi-weekly updates with the Campbell Steering Committee. Reminding you that we have two investments with the Campbell Timber Group. One is on the Sabine River between Louisiana and Texas. It's the predominant largest segment of our investment with the Campbell Group. But in putting that portfolio together, they leveraged that account. And by that I mean they borrowed money in order to make the purchase. And there are times when leverage will work for you, and there are times when leverage can put you out of the game, and leverage has really hurt the portfolio as well as the performance. As you know, the housing industry has been extremely down for the last 5 or 6 years, from about 2008 or 2009 through current year. With the drop in the housing building going on, that has really hurt the demand for timber in the United States. And as such, they could not cut enough timber to meet the cash flow needs to pay the loan timely. So they're working on two options. One is there's two firms working with us, and they're noted here in the update that's in your book. Houlihan Lokey is a nationally renowned firm that works on renegotiated contracts and renegotiated arrangements with lenders. They're very familiar with the Ag Bank and with some of the other major lenders in this portfolio. And they're working on restructuring the debt, which would mean they might be looking at things like a lower interest rate, maybe a lower amortization, maybe other key points to that lending agreement that might make it more palatable for Campbell to meet those guidelines. In addition, we have UBS, and this is a completely different arm than the UBS firm that we have working with us, the Prime Consulting Group. But UBS has a very, very well-respected arm of their business that deals with negotiation of sales. We're in a very sensitive time frame with this, because if the word gets out on the market that Campbell is trying to sell this property, you're going to get lowballed on any attempt to sell the property. So we're working toward getting some confidentiality agreements in place. That'll be done here probably by this weekend. We have in those bi-weekly meetings, both Houlihan and UBS has told us that they feel comfortable that we will have a comprehensive option available to the steering committee and to the Campbell Group by the end of January. And that would include whether or not we can renegotiate the sale, which would be my desired option. But if we can't renegotiate the lending agreement, then the sale will also be laid out for us, and we'll know exactly what we're going to get based on what we have been able to determine. You know, we write our investments down each month, mark to market, based on current values, and we would not have hardly any write-off if we have any. In fact, the last two liquidity reports I've seen from Campbell last week indicate improving circumstances in the timber industry, as they're seeing a lot of pickup in activity here in the United States. And that's encouraging. But there's still a lot of obstacles in front of us as we go toward getting this settled. But the good news is it will not have any additional impact over and above what we have already written down in our portfolio at this point in time.
Though, for those who are not familiar with it, from what I understand, correct me, I think that the main player in this Campbell Group thing is CalPERS, which is the California Public Employees Retirement System.
Correct.
And they have quite a influence on where it goes. So.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, Kevin. That's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. CalPERS has I'd say about, they're the big dog in the room. They've got about a 90 to 95% investment in this fund. We're the small guys on the street, but they have allowed us to participate in the meetings, although they don't listen to too much of what I have to say, but they do let me speak. And I've gotten a distinct impression that CalPERS, for some reason, wants the sale to take place. They want a complete sale of the assets, liquidate, get it off the books. I think it's kind of like CalPERS did, if you've been following also in the hedge fund world. They made the decision to liquidate their holdings in the hedge fund world and get out for whatever reasons. And they did it. They don't fool around. They're a little different than we are. I would describe us as a little bit more strategic, a lot more, I hope, prudent in some ways in how we go about making our decisions. Not that we make good decisions all the time, but the process is in place to cause us to at least think clearly before we make a decision. They want to get that thing off of their books, and they're willing to do it at any price, and I'm not. I know I don't have a lot to say about that, but there are a few others on that steering committee. There are 6 of us. There are a few others that do agree with me that a more prudent, maybe a little bit longer term play might be appropriate with the markets coming back like they are. So hopefully we'll have some good news between now and the end of January so that we'll be able to know exactly where we stand. But that is probably the most challenging situation that we have in our investment portfolio at the moment.
Okay, thank you, update, Earl. All right, do we have a,
I'll move.
you made a motion?
Yes,
Motion by Amy, second?
Second.
Approve the minutes. Passed. All right, item number 6 is a presentation by UBS, and Rob's not here, but Miss Robin is.
Yes, I am, thank you. Before we get to the flash report, and I do have obviously the November numbers as you do in your books, and I'll touch on those for sure. Just wanted to give you a little bit, there's a couple of things that people keep talking about, particularly in the past week. Obviously, falling oil prices, and secondly, the other thing that was big news that I don't know which of you who saw, but there was another Fed meeting today, so interest rates, right? Now, for those of you who didn't see it come across your news desk, so to speak, the Fed has made this, we're keeping interest rates low for a considerable time. So no definitive information. Some folks thought there'd be more definitive guidance in terms of how if they were ready to start to make the move on rates, but no definitive guidance. The good news is today, or at least in the last 20 minutes, the markets were loving it and kind of came roaring back this morning or this afternoon as a result of it. So the other thing, obviously, again, the interest rates, we're still, all of our economists, every economist really on the street is still talking about that, sort of maybe second quarter, maybe even third quarter of 2015, finally seeing, some rising interest rates. In terms of the energy situation, again, it's made a lot of the market, nervous. We think, our economists think at UBS and several other sort of key economists as well, that it's not a bad thing. Energy is down 40%, straight around $56 a barrel. The thing about low oil prices, though, is that the dollar goes back to the consumer. When consumers spend money, it's great for the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is 70% consumer-driven, and that ultimately can add to GDP growth, all good things. Another couple of things reasons, we like the equity markets and continue to in 2015. Strong retail sales figures are coming out, always good. Retail, shopping, all of that drives the economy. And then small business confidence is up, which means potentially more hiring, more jobs. So overall, not necessarily a bad thing. In terms of state police and your portfolio, I talked to Rob a little bit about this. He said last year you had looked very focused and narrowed in on what the exposure was related to energy. At that time it was about 9%. And that's certainly something, we could get a little more, make sure that number is still in line. Although generally these don't swing dramatically one way or the other. The S&P's energy exposure is 10%. So you've got a little risk-adjusted protection there compared to, the S&P itself. But no need to make any tactical shifts. Obviously, everyone's watching these and what they're going to do to the market. But we think, steady climbing in 2015 as we get more consumer confidence and improving economic numbers. So that's kind of where that is.
I didn't hear I was walking late. Did you talk about the interest rate?
I did. As far as today's meeting and the Fed we're going to keep interest rates low for a considerable time. which, you know, the markets like it, but there's no direct guidance. You know, everybody kind of had this feeling that perhaps they would make a more pointed time frame statement, and they haven't done that yet. So the good news is your equities, at least today, are feeling the benefits of that. So hopefully that trend will continue.
Robin, maybe if I could add to that, Robin and I talked yesterday about this issue with energy, and I had the opportunity last Friday afternoon to sit in on a phone conference with the Methodist Foundation, which I serve on as a member of their board, and they were looking at the same issue with the impact of energy on the portfolio there at the foundation. And although their portfolio is about a third, maybe a fourth the size of ours, it's still significant. It's about 150 or 60 million. But their consultants, I will say this, are, in my opinion, much more tactically oriented. That means they're more, they kind of like to move the market around. They like to move the portfolio around a lot more than I'm comfortable with, and a lot more than I think is prudent. And they made some recommendations based on that they're going to be changing some pretty dramatic changes in the portfolio for the foundation. I voted against it, but I was not one in the majority, so they will be making some changes down there. But I would concur completely with what Robin has said and what Rob has indicated to me, and that is that our exposure is fairly limited. The impact on the greater segment of the market that's important to us, that consumer area, will be much more important than the impact negatively on our energy component of our portfolio. So thank you, Robin, for talking with Rob and getting that information for us. And I think what we'll do is maybe talk a little bit more. We'll ask Rob to talk a little bit more about it in January as we see this thing play out a little bit. But I believe that sometimes you have to step back away from these dramatic moves and not be too quick to respond, because you can get caught on both sides of the movement there, down and up, and it can be even worse. So I appreciate the work that y'all did to prepare that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions for Robin?
She hadn't gone over those.
The flash report.
All right then.
Okay, so, all right, so to the numbers for the end of November. If you call your attention to the pie chart, I'll just make a brief comment on, you know, your allocation looks good, all well within your targets. You know, I would comment in that same realm of what Erwin was just saying. You know, you're playing the long game, so, and you've always played the long game, not the tactical shifts, you know, in response to the market. So total fund value at the end of November, you can see down there at the bottom, $630,924,839.
Yeah. It's another new high.
So, exactly, so that's your ending value. If you want to turn, and we'll take a look at the returns, if you look at the flash report, and I'm going to focus on that fiscal year-to-date column, and I'll just, you know, it's in terms of your green and red, your under and over performance, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Well, including your November 30 numbers, looking at fiscal year-to-date. However, if I can focus your attention, if we look at just your equity managers, again, on the fiscal year-to-date, if you look at that total domestic equity managers, fiscal year-to-date return 3.89%. If you look underneath that, so that's all your domestic equity managers together. Taking a look at your international equity, now, you know, international equities had a rougher go of it here. This year, and part of last year. But fiscal year-to-date down 5.9%, that's on your total international equity. So your total equity managers fiscal year-to-date have returned 1.33%. On the fixed income side, again, fiscal year-to-date, I'm all the way sort of down at the bottom. If we just take a look at the total fixed income managers, down 18 basis points, you know, that's a reflection of the very low interest rate environment that those fixed income managers are working within. If you flip the page, you know, overall down there at the bottom, fiscal year-to-date, the total fund, when we take into account all of your managers, fiscal year-to-date is up a little over 1%, 1.01% to be exact. So, you know, all things considered, it's certainly not terrible, and we've had such a mixed bag, and obviously that's, you know, both the low interest rates as well as some of the international, equities that have combined to kind of put all this together, but up 1% fiscal year to date. So as of the end of November, and hopefully that'll increase a little bit when we see the final numbers. The last 2 weeks in the market are generally a little quiet, very low trading volume, so we'll see how that, plays out and what the month ends up.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pass out this Act 1004 comparison sheet that we normally do. This is through September the 30th. We had done this previously, but just to remind you, and I think Amy mentioned in her investment committee report, we have had some issues with our custodial bank in terms of handling some of the more complex transactions for our, in particular, alternative managers. Most of those managers have about a 60 to a 90-day reporting lag because of audit issues involved in those alternative types of assets like real estate and timber, like hedge funds and private equity. But what we did was we went back, and after we got all the revisions finalized, and this was done by Christine Dugas, who's there in the UBS office there in New Orleans with Robin, and works also with Rob. And Kristen Leto has worked with us on trying to get this done, and of course Kim and I have been trying to be diligent in working with JP Morgan also. This is simply a comparison report of our performance, and just to remind you, our performance prior to getting the final revisions, for the fiscal year-to-date number, we're showing down 1.66%. This is through September. On the previous report, we were down 2.18%. So we had some improvement, most of it with portfolio advisors. It was a pretty substantial change there, and we also had one on PRISA, our real estate manager. So those two together moved the loss from 2.18% down to 1.66% for us, and you can see how it compares there with lasers. They were down 2.1%. Teachers was down 1.8%, and ELSER, school employees there, was down 0.95%. And then we have the across the statewide systems down at the bottom of the page and on the second page. But obviously, we report these numbers not only to you, our board, but we report these numbers to the legislature, to the various members of the legislative staff, as well as to the other retirement systems. And we wanted to be sure that these numbers were accurate and that we get these things updated properly. So I hope we've gotten most of these issues behind us with JP Morgan. We've had some great meetings with Kristen and Christine Dugas and Kim and myself in talking with all the people at JP Morgan who are involved in this custodial relationship. And I think we've made some headway. Still a few challenges left, but we are working to get those things resolved. And we hope to have a final definitive answer for us maybe by January, as Amy mentioned a few minutes ago. So, Mr. Chairman, that's it as far as investments.
Thank you. Any questions for Robin? Thank you, Robin. Moving on to financial report, Kristen.
Okay, I am under tab number 4. First, you'll see the October check register, the first 2 pages. On the first page, I'd like to point out the additional legal fees expense for Walter, Crawford, Johnson, and Livingston, which was on 10/7. On the second page for October, we had a refund of contributions for Sean Rivers. Otherwise, they were just our normal monthly expenses for October. November is just that one page, the very next page, page 3. And I didn't have anything out of the ordinary to point out here, just our normal office expenses, payroll expenses. The next page is the net assets held in trust for pension benefits as of November 30th. It's $630,698,088. And again, just pointing out, which was also included on the information that Robin gave, I had the asterisk at the bottom, but the totals there do not include November 30th information for alternative managers due to reporting periods that exceeded that 30 days. The next page is a statement of changes in pension benefits. And you'll see November was a very good month. It really has brought our fiscal year-to-date total up into a good area. So that very first column, the current month, this month, November 30th, our increase was just over 6.5 million, bringing our year-to-date total over 8.5 million. The next page is the budget summary for the 5 months ending November 30th. And we have a good budget going here, but you'll see that we have that legal fee category that's given us some trouble. And I know when we looked at that as of September 30th, we saw that it was creeping up there. So we've had those additional expenses related to the legislation. And then the other areas of custodial and investment manager fees, you'll see they're looking very under budget, but of course those are paid quarterly, so we'll all watch that. If anybody has any questions. Go ahead. Okay. The very next page is the JP Morgan balance report, which I just read for the record, the balances in each of the accounts. Cash reserve, $21,478,090. State Street S&P, $34,695,793. State Street Lehman, $18,689,211. State Street Global S&P 400, $34,590,665. PRISA, $12,704,764. JP Morgan Strategic Property Fund, $20,567,243. UBP Asset Management, $1,061,300. GAM, $148,488. Campbell, $6,299,574. Hancock Timber, $3,731,035. T. Rowe Price, $73,387,433. Prisma Hedge Fund, $14,378,767. Portfolio Advisors, $10,562,303. Brandis, $16,712,285. Vontabell, $17,899,251. Straight Street Global Index, it's the same as Vontabell. That's part of a typo, but I'll read it nonetheless. $17,899,251. Intrust Cap, $14,900,669. Aberdeen, $29,810,869. Waddell and Reed, $35,736,570. Templeton, $32,633,980. Loomis Sales, $47,507,557. Orleans Cap, $37,445,403. Aronson, $83,647,945. Our job account with our one number in there, $71,169. Fisher, $40,479,470. Brandywine, $21,856,173. And the total is $648,895,258. And I would just like to note that State Street Global ETH Index account it's got to be a typo there because it's the same exact as Vontabell. And we know that our total is not 648 million. Right,
Yeah.
so we need to,
I'll get with Carol on that, but this is just indicative of the kind of problems that we're having with JP Morgan.
and we get this at the very last minute.
Yeah,
So
we
have
get it.
very limited exposure to it prior to the meeting, so. But our total is. what's
Because
recorded.
yours and Robin's total is very
Very
close,
close.
which is what's expected.
So if you take off that SSGA EP index, you'll get to the 630.
Yeah, so something's very
It's
wrong.
probably much smaller than that.
You know, I don't think is that the index that we pulled out of?
We do
Yeah.
not, we do not.
That's
we-
a zero.
we do
That
not.
should be the
Zero.
zero.
Yeah.
Well, then
We do not
there's
have
the
an
18
EP
million
index.
right there.
Right.
Yes,
So
that's
that's
18
what-
million difference.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, I knew that we had gotten out of that EP index. Okay. I'll get with Carol and we'll get that corrected.
We'll redistribute this report to the board. We'll send it to you by email there so that you'll have it in corrected form. That mistake should not have been on there.
Right.
So we'll correct one on the right.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to accept the financial report? Motion by Ms. Amy, second by Bobby. Any objection? I see none, so moved.
Moving on to the audit report.
Somebody can go up, buddy.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of the audit report and have a little outline of the highlights? Okay, yeah, we've recently completed our audit for the year ended June 30th, 2014. Just briefly go over some of the highlights of the audit. As part of the audit, there are two actual reports we issue. The first one is our independent auditor's report on the financial statements themselves. The two things to consider that, the financial statements and everything contained in the report is ultimately management's responsibility. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on those financials and footnotes and all the information based on the results of our audits. And the important thing to note there is we issued an unqualified opinion. That's the highest opinion we can give. Basically, as you see there below, in our opinion, it means that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. The second report we issued is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. The two parts of that, basically, we're required to consider the internal controls over financial reporting to help determine our audit procedures, but not for the purpose of actually expressing opinion on the effectiveness of those internal controls. So we do not ever express an opinion on the effectiveness of those. Also, we're required to test compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grants, etc., where non-compliance could have a material effect on the financial statements. But again, not for the purpose of actually expressing an opinion on compliance. But given those qualifications, as part of our audit, there were no internal control deficiencies or any other non-compliance noted as part of the audit. Again, as you see, that's consistent with prior year. We had no findings in the current year or the prior year, which we're always happy to report. Yes. Some brief financial highlights for the year. Net assets at June 30, 2014 were about $622.8 million. That's compared to about $521.1 million at the prior year. That was an increase of about $101.7 million from the prior year. There below on the first page, there's a summary of the total investments at fair value at June 30th under various types and the change from year to year. See total investments at year end of about $662.5 million compared to close to $550 million in the prior year. On the second page, we have the additions to net assets for the year and the deductions. See total additions for the year of about $144.3 million as compared to around $112 million in the prior year. You see that the domain component of that increase of 32.3 million was the increase in investment income for the year of around almost 31 million. And also there was an increase in transfers into the system of about 1.1 million. And that makes up almost all the change from year to year. Deductions from plan net assets, you see those are very consistent from last year, total about 42.6 million in 2014 as compared to around 42.4 million in the prior year. An increase of only 191,000 approximately for the prior year. The one big change in this current year audit was the implementation of GASB 67, which required some enhanced disclosures and new required supplementary information to be presented. And I'll refer you in the audit report to pages 22 through 24. Some of the new required supplementary information. That schedule on page 22 is the schedule of changes in net pension liability and related ratios. That's newly required under GASB 67. That total pension liability is actuarially determined of 837.9 million, and then that is compared to the net position based on the financial statements of the 622.8 million, and that shows you your net ending pension liability at June 30, 2014 of around 215 million. And you see there your net position as percentage of that total pension liability at year end was about 74.3% coverage of that liability. On page 23, another new required schedule. It's a 10-year schedule of employer contributions, which compares the actuarially determined contributions with the contributions that are actually made for the year, and showing the excess or deficiency of contributions for those years. And the final schedule on page 24, and this will actually also ultimately be a 10-year schedule of investment returns. Within the first year, it only covers that initial year of implementation of the annual money-weighted rate of return of investments, net of investment expenses. And you see that was about 18.07% for the year. That's about all I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Any questions?
How many years do we have remaining on our contract with them?
This was it. It was actually, they did a 1-year extension this year, so that covered this audit. So that is over as of now.
So we will have to have another contract? Is that
Yes.
what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm not positive if they will allow us to renew, or will it have to go back out to bid, or what the process is.
Normally, those contracts with audit firms are for 3 years. This one, for some reason, they reduced it to a 1-year contract, and I'm not sure what the purpose administratively of doing it that way, because it certainly creates more work. They have to go back through another process, unless their plans were after the year, just simply say that, everything was okay, and we'd like to go ahead and just extend the contract for an additional year. If that were the case, would Hines and Macaluso be interested in extending that contract?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
I would just simply like to thank Mike and his staff and the partners there at Hines and Macaluso. We have had a great working relationship with those people, and I think one of the things that should give you as a board comfort is I try to remind you from time to time, and some people are new, Marcia, and we need to be sure we remind people all the time, and that is that Kristen Leto works with Stephen Griffin and Associates. She is an independent accountant, and they are an independent firm. They do not report to Kim or to me. They report to you, the board, and that is to give you the complete objectivity that if you think there's something that maybe Kim or I might not, or the staff here might not be doing, or things that we shouldn't be doing that we are doing, you have every right to inquire with that from Kristen and Stephen Griffin, as well as our external auditors there with Hines and Macaluso. And we've always had a great relationship with those folks, and
a lot of it is because of the work that Kristen and Steve and their firm does to assist us during the year, so that at the end of the year, our records are pretty much in good shape in that regard. The one caveat this year would be the custodial issues there with J.P. Morgan, and we're working diligently to try to get corrected with those folks. And most of it, as I said before, stems from the difficulties in reporting the alternative assets with a lag time reporting period there. So with those comments of gratitude to Kristen and Stephen, and as well as to you, Mike, and your firm, I feel very good about where we're at and the condition that we've been. Auditors have always been an important part of the organization to me, because they assure us that we're all doing what we should be doing. So thank you, Mike. And
Thank you, I appreciate you, Erwin and Kim, and again, Kristen, for all the work you all do to make this smooth process. I know we have that tight deadline, complicated, like you said, by the alternative investments now with the lag and valuation. So, but, we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to accept the audit report? Motion by Kevin, second by Thurman. Any objection? See none? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sir.
Mike.
Moving on to retirement drop approval.
First, the retirement drop approvals. We have Bobby Barnes, retired on December the 15th. Dropped 3 years with a monthly amount of $4,357.95. We have Travis Savoy to retire on January the 19th of 2015. Regular retirement with a monthly amount of $5,619.
Can I get a motion to accept retirement drop approval? Motion by Bobby, second by Thurman. Any objection? See none, so moved. The elimination and award benefits for spouses.
First we have John Jones, his date of death was November the 27th. His monthly benefit was $1,662.55, and there's a surviving spouse of Francis. And then I have 4 add-ons that we've done since we prepared the agenda. Mr. Rudy Guillory, he date of death was November the 25th. The monthly benefit was $758.52, and he has a surviving spouse of Eva. Then we have William McBroom, date of death was December the 2nd. Monthly benefit amount was $1,529.53. Surviving spouse was Faye. Then we have Malcolm Millay, his date of death was December the 4th. Monthly amount was $3,585.01. The surviving spouse is Josephine. And then Paul Olivier, his date of death was December the 9th. Monthly benefit was $1,323.77, and their surviving spouse is Teresa.
Can I get a motion to accept the benefits for the spouses? Motion by Bobby, second by Kevin. Any objection? See none, so moved. Another business, I think,
Yes, I have one item of business that I'd like to mention. I mentioned it earlier as we were talking about increases in expenditures for our accounting firm as well as for our investment consultant. And the other increase that I would like to bring before the board and ask for your approval is for our legal counsel, Denise Akers with the firm of Akers and Wisborne. As you know, Denise has been with us now for, Denise, about 2 years? Yeah. 2 years. So these times have passed very quickly, and Denise has worked with us diligently, and I think you got a chance to see her in action at the last board meeting back in September, when we really had to struggle because of some legislative issues that came up. And can't tell you how much I have appreciated what Denise does, and more importantly, how she does it. I feel very badly in some ways for what took place in that situation. I can tell you that our legal expenses are considerably out of budget, as you saw on the budget report. Approximately $32,000 of that $34,000 total legal expenditure was due to that litigation, that we had no part to play in that, but we simply had to find a way to defend ourselves and protect the assets of this retirement system. And of that $32,000 associated with the litigation, I would say about $30,000 was affiliated with, or paid to Mr. Clausner for his efforts there. And I had felt very badly that we were under a contract that did not allow us to do more to help compensate Denise and her firm for the work and effort that she put in and they put into this effort. But as a result of that, and based on what we think is right and appropriate and prudent for the system, we're currently paying Denise and her firm $1,400 a month legal retainer. We have talked with her. She's drawn up an agreement here that if the board approves it today, we would go ahead and sign it on behalf of the board, and it would move that monthly fee from $1,400 to $1,500 a month. It would also allow for, it would be basically a one-year contract, but it would be terminable by either party, us or her and her firm, with a 30-day written advance notice. So it's basically a very fair and prudent contract, I think. It allows us to get the benefit of some very good legal background and knowledge that they have at a very reasonable cost. There are some provisions in the contract that would allow for a better reflection of the cost or expenses associated with any litigation, maybe a little bit better than we had in the other contract. But I'll be honest with you, I do not foresee, nor do I hope we ever get involved in any litigation of that magnitude again. So with that in mind, I would simply recommend to the board that with your approval, I would sign off on this contract with Denise and the firm of Akers and Wisbor for a $1,500 a month contract.
Can I get a motion that we accept?
Motion
by
to accept,
Bobby.
yes.
Second by Kevin. Any objection? See none? So moved. Any other business? I think that's it. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? A motion by Bobby? Second by Kevin. Objection.
Merry Christmas.